Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 16th January 2024. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Hardan, 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 Haribol, TSV Nectar, NECTAR, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been trying to discuss about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been trying to do in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous, present, and future videos. So let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. In the past few videos, we have been trying to discuss, study, and analyze at length the quality and the workings of a term called mind, which is the name of the subtle instrument that helps the chariot called the human living entity in a lifetime in this material world run and operate. In other words, this mind is a subtle instrument that guides a chariot called the living entity, whether male or female, to achieve his or her purpose in a life. We also know that this particular purpose in a life is understood only by 25% of the multitude of humanity in the society in a lifetime in this material world. The other 75% are only the vegetative type who move around in the society in a trance and zombie-like. Of the remaining 25% who know that there is a purpose of life in their own birth in this lifetime in the material world. 20%, alas, gravitate towards the dark, negative forces of this material world, while only 5% are the chosen few who are attracted towards the positive forces of this material world and who also try to think positively either materialistically or spiritually or both. The multitude of chosen ones in the 5% category usually belongs to those who are positively both material and spiritual. In other words, of this 5% category, there cannot be someone who is totally material, but there may be some chosen few who are totally spiritual. It is because of the quality and quantity of spiritualism more in quantity in this 5% category that it becomes the chosen ones. However, I would hasten to add that even those who are totally material and positive are indeed attracted towards and intrigued about spiritualism. They may try to criticize it or be cynical or paradoxical about it, but yet you may appreciate that it is their innate curiosity that makes them initially cynical before going both positive and spiritual or totally spiritual. Saints, evangelists, thinkers, philosophers, rishis, maharishis, sages, monks, inventors, discoverers, intellectuals, thinkers, philosophers, teachers, professors, and so on. That is, those who think either cerebrally or spiritually belong to this category. There are also very big businessmen, tycoons, magnates, etc., who directly or indirectly contribute to this category of select few chosen ones who are always either trying to think or meditate upon spiritual energy in this material world. We all know by now that spiritual energy is the superior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the material energy is the inferior energy of the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. A combination of both. That is, when an individual spirit soul is enveloped by a cocoon of four layers of material body, namely the causal body of intelligence, the astral body of feelings and emotions and mind, the etheric body of senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Then, this complete capsule, consisting of the individual spirit soul and the four layers of material body, the fourth layer of gross body made up of four elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth. This makes one capsule in which there is one individual spirit soul which is enveloped with the causal body of intelligence and logic, astral body of mind, feelings and emotions, etheric body of senses being sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and the fourth gross body made up of four elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth, makes up a capsule called the living entity. This living entity goes through a seemingly endless, infinite chain of births and deaths in various species in this material world. When it is born in the human species, begins to think and contemplate and ultimately realize its true self as the same individual spirit soul which has been so haplessly cocooned in four layers of material body. When this self realization of its own true self as the spirit soul happens to a living entity, it immediately begins to meditate upon how to liberate itself or throw away the shackles of the layers of material body in such a way that it ultimately gets freed from these endless repeated chains of birth and death in this material world. Once this is achieved, the same living entity, now turned individual spirit soul, which is an evolved, matured, and cerebrally inclined or superior spirit soul, ultimately decides to get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead permanently. We have all been discussing about this very mind, which not only keeps the living entity operating in this material world, but also helps the same hapless living entity realize its own true self. Though mind is material in nature and a subtle one at that, it helps every living entity contemplate on his or her position in life in this material world, and it helps the same living entity improve upon its status in this material world and to go towards the spiritual world. This mind is extremely complicated in the sense that if a living entity gets confused or too confused to understand it, it becomes a helpless victim of the vibrations emanating out of the same mind and getting deposited in a mass of tissue called brain, which is safely embedded in the skull of that same living entity's gross body. When this happens, the same living entity keeps getting births and deaths in a seemingly endless chain of births and deaths in this material world. It does not stop till ultimately the same mind helps the same living entity realize this mind and then beg this same mind to help the same material living entity realize its spiritual self. While discussing about this strange, subtle instrument called mind, which is both material as well as helpful in realizing the spiritual self, we discussed about several case histories to try to understand how this mind operates. In that process, we initially thought and discussed about monks, sages, etc., from the chosen few 5% of the society. But later on, to understand the same mind better, we decided to discuss the case history of several individual living entities which were attracted to the dark negative forces of the mind to find out what made those people get attracted to the dark negative forces. These dark negative forces have been in this material world for times immemorial. That is precisely the reason why in Hindu mythology there is a creator, a maintainer, and a destroyer of all that has been created in this society. The creator is known as Brahma, the maintainer is known as Vishnu, and the destroyer is known as Shiva. These three forces, which are personalized as Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, form a triumvirate of gods who rule this particular society and have been doing so for times immemorial. Coming back to the case histories, we are discussing about the case history of a living entity called Daud Ibrahim Kaskar, who was born in the family of a police constable attached to the Nagpala police station of a locality in a city called Bombay or Mumbai, which is the commercial capital of the state of Maharashtra in India. I said access because while discussing the life of the same Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar, we are also trying to look into the minds of other living entities who were also advertently or inadvertently attracted to the dark negative forces of this material world. Now we are trying to find the cause that made some of these living entities forcibly get attracted to the negative forces. We know by now that during the 70s and the 80s, Bombay, the commercial capital, or Mumbai as it is called now, had several industrial factories and establishments and business houses belonging to four very prosperous and successful business communities called Parsis, Marwadis, Gujaratis, and Sindhis, who belonged mainly to two states outside the state of Maharashtra, namely Rajasthan and Gujarat. These people were ruling these industrial establishments and business houses while these establishments were being successfully run by a labor force which mainly consisted of some people from the community called Maharashtrians who were the natives of the same Maharashtra state. One among them, who was not exactly a worker but a professional doctor, catered to the health issues of the workers and their families at a reasonable price for the benefit of the same labor force. The name of this particular doctor was Dr. Datta Samant. Dr. Datta Samant also was a Hindu Maharashtrian who was trying to cure the ailments of the existing huge labor force of Maharashtrians in those industrial establishments and business houses ruled by the foreign communities of Marwadis, Gujaratis, Sindhis, and Parsis. Somewhere down the line, the same Datta Samant, due to his noble intentions, began to slowly become a leader for the community consisting of the same labor force. Datta Samant, being a professional and an intellectual at that, decided to campaign in favor of the same labor force and to become its own spokesman when conferring with or talking to those capitalist businessmen who ruled those industrial establishments and business houses. In that process, several meetings, confrontations, conferences, etc. happened between these two forces, one of the workers and one of the capitalists. Many a time, these workers were considered positive and a lot of financial gains, insurance, income, remuneration, bonus, uh, and promotions, etc., were provided to them by those capitalist business house managers and owners. But however, sooner or later, a conflict arose between these two categories thanks to the adamant obstinacy of Datta Samant and the obstinacy and adamant arrogance of the capitalists. This resulted in several lockdowns and strikes, which made several of these labor forces lose their jobs or income as workers or laborers in the same industrial establishments and factories. This resulted in mass hunger among the families of the same laborers who had till now been living peacefully and happily. As it is said in English, the only permanent thing in this world is change. What was a peaceful coexistence between the capitalists and the workers soon changed into chaos which had to be solved before progressing further. However, due to large scale unemployment, industrial strikes, lockdowns, etc., several families began going hungry for days on end. This did not deter the same Dr. Datta Samant from campaigning in favor of the workers against the capitalists. The workers also played along and they felt that supporting Datta Samant was the only way to achieve long term success and cash rewards. We shall continue our discussion about this process in my next video. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular subject. Please give me your own expert views, thoughts, ideas, and opinions so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.